we approve the minutes of September 6th.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Maria, I'll abstain.
one abstention. All right. Moving on to the warrants, we have 6P. From the Cemetery Committee, we have number 2, and the Conservation Commission, number 3.
So I'm gonna approve, we approve for payment, warrant 6, warrant 6P, cemetery number 2, and conservation number 3.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? So the grand total of warrant 6 is $602,946.82, and of that, $553,325 is going to Brattleboro Union High School, from as Dummerston's portion of that. $19,398 is just finishing the property tax payment to the Dummerston School. And then we have a couple of Green Mountain Power bills, some gravel, and the monthly sheriff's contract. So, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. So now we're going to get to recognition of visitors and public comments, and we've asked Dummerston Cares to come and give us an update. And do you want to come up to the...
Okay, we have for you our recently completed volunteer handbook
Okay.
that explains some of our standards and procedures and some of the programs we have. And I assume you all got the materials that I brought in here about 10 days ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'll start by saying, you know, Dummerston Cares is an all...
Do you want to introduce
Oh,
yourself?
sorry. I'm Susan Dagler. I am the corporate secretary of Dummerston Cares. And this is Bill Schmidt, Bill Johnson.
Maybe
Bill
let him
Johnson.
speak for himself.
Yeah,
It's always safer.
Usually safer. Bill Johnson, and I'm the vice chair. Bill Schmidt would be here, except this is his 1 week of annual vacation, or as he explains it, the other 51 weeks he's on vacation in the Lease Hills. Anyway, because the meeting, our appearance, the date had changed, he had already planned to be at the Cape this week.
Great.
Okay, now.
okay. Well, Dummerston Cares was totally reorganized over the past fiscal year, and we filed new articles of incorporation, got our 501c3 approval from the IRS, and our sales tax exemption from the state of Vermont. We have new comprehensive bylaws. We're an all-volunteer organization and have managed to pull together a strong, well-functioning board. We're asking for some town support, monetary support for our budget. We do get contributions from the general public, but the town support is important to us also. We didn't spend a whole lot of money last year, but we anticipate spending more this year. For one thing, the cost for printing is going to go up. Last year I did all the printing in my office. That's not going to continue. We will have, we'll need training for both our volunteers and our directors. We may be hiring program facilitators for some of our programs, paid facilitators. And we want to acquire some audio-visual equipment. And at the present time, we do not have liability insurance, and we may revisit that. We discussed it at length this year, and it would have taken half of all the funds we had on hand. So we went without it this year. I don't know if that'll continue or not. We have some money in what we call a heat fund. We want to build that up a little bit more because we think that last year was particularly mild. I think that the demands on the heat fund will fluctuate widely over the years, but some year we're gonna get hit with a lot of requests for emergency assistance for heat. And we wanna have a little bit of cushion in there. Right now, there's only about $1,300 there. And we've instituted a number of programs. We're not trying to duplicate any programs that already exist in the larger community. We don't do Meals on Wheels. We're not going to operate a homeless shelter or anything like that. There are already organizations that do that for the larger community. But one of our most successful programs so far has been a rides program. If a person needs a ride to a medical appointment, or if they're in some kind of a medical crisis and even just need a ride to go grocery shopping or whatever, we provide that. We have a team of drivers, volunteer drivers that we can call on, and we pick them up, take them where they need to go, and bring them back. We have some volunteers that leave and go as far as Boston. We haven't had to do that yet, but we have made many trips to Dartmouth Hitchcock. Any questions about any of that, or?
So what, you have your annual meeting? is it
Sunday.
Next, okay. So what's your proposed budget for your next year?
Our proposed budget for next year, we propose to spend $4,425, of which $500 is a transfer to the heat fund. The remainder is normal expenditures, telephone, postage, professional services, professional development, equipment purchases, and so on. We anticipate taking in about $3,500 in total contributions. That's in line with what we received this year, but as you know, that can fluctuate.
Susan, you mentioned getting 501c3 status.
Yes.
I'm curious, who did the work? Did you
I
do
did.
that? Good for you.
I did the articles of incorporation, the 501c3, the sales tax thing, and the bylaws.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it helps to have people in the community with different skills, and that's what I could do. When Bill asked me would I be on the board, I said yes, but I won't be the treasurer.
Mhm.
And so John Wilcox is the treasurer.
Okay.
I'll help with reporting, and I'll take care of all the regulatory stuff.
Mhm.
I'm comfortable doing that. I'm the registered agent.
Sure,
That's in my comfort zone.
sure.
So how many volunteers do you currently have?
I didn't bring with me a copy of the annual report, it's in there.
Okay, it's in here. About 62.
Wow.
62 people expressed an interest in volunteering. Well, it says we have 62 people expressed an interest. Of those, 48
Okay.
have committed to being volunteers.
Mhm.
That happened, the expression of interest happened during Election Day last November when we had questionnaires available
Yeah.
for the voting public.
Mhm.
And that was rather amazing in itself,
Yes.
that many people stepped forward.
So if people are listening to this or watching this, who should they get in touch with if they want more information or if they want to?
They should call our
volunteer?
helpline, the Dummerston Cares helpline. The number is 802-257-5800. And you'll leave a recorded message, and we check those messages twice a day. That's how clients and or volunteers can, or even if you just want more information,
Mhm. Okay,
or you can contact anybody from the board.
okay.
If you'd like, I'm prepared just to say a few words about each of our services.
Sure.
The helpline is one that started way back at the beginning of Dummerston Cares, 2005, was it, whenever
I believe, yes.
And the telephone is still sitting on the table over at the community center. However, we have it set up so that any of us can access messages that come in from our own phones, and we check those at least once a day. So it's not an emergency line by any stretch. It's not intended to be. It's just simply if someone wants information, wants to recommend themselves or someone else for particular services, we will respond regardless of what the question is, regardless if it's about something that's within our purview, or if we can refer people to Senior Solutions or SeVEDS or any other organization. The other program that is a carryover without change was the emergency fuel assistance, which Susan referred to as the heat fund. Actually there were no requests for emergency assistance this past year, which I'm not sure if that sets a precedent or not, because I'm not familiar with historically how much demand there has been on that fund. But I assume that it's rather unusual, and maybe if climate change continues in the direction it is, that will happen more frequently. We'll see. Part of the emergency fuel assistance I might mention is the firewood program that's actually operated through the Dummerston Church, actually through Charlie Richardson.
Yeah.
He's pretty much the coordinator of that, so any requests we get for that will be forwarded to him. All of the other programs which you see in the annual report are new, instituted starting essentially in January. So this past year, even though it's a 12-month annual report, it's really 6 months of service once we got things rolling. Susan mentioned the rides program, transportation program. We've had a number of people using that to get up to Hanover, Lebanon, Dartmouth Hitchcock, and also back and forth to Brattleboro Memorial or the Grace Cottage, exactly, and Keene as well. I think we may have had a call or two to go to Greenfield, but we'll take people, unlike the locally available service where you need to get a reservation in several days in advance, and which does have regular stops if you're within a half a mile or so of the Route 5 corridor. And we do refer people to that program. I've seen your moment on what it's current, that's right, of course. We're not trying to take business away from the current, but supplement either when assistance is asked for on a shorter time frame than which they operate, or outside the area that they operate, or if it's to a private practitioner's clinic that they do not drive directly to, they just simply go to the major hospitals. The other program, which got started even later, medical equipment loan, and that is gearing up very quickly, both in medical equipment available and medical equipment requested. I don't know, I guess we've had half a dozen or
Something like that, yeah.
requests for program, and Heidi Fisher stepped forward last November saying, I am a registered nurse and I am willing to work with medical equipment because I have experience. So we jumped on that, and now she's one of our board members and coordinator of that program. And we had some donations, quite a bit of equipment that came from the hospice program in Brattleboro. They were overloaded and they said, could you take some of this equipment off our hands? So we have 2 storage areas in Dummerston, depending on whether it's little stuff or big stuff, like beds or whatever. The Friendly Visitor Program got underway in January with training for a dozen people who came forward saying they'd like to be volunteers. 8 ended up, after the training, being on our list of volunteers available for friendly home visits. And that program is exactly what it says. It's just to go and say hello, chat a while, help somebody write letters or play a game or simple things that you would do with your own neighbors if you knew that they couldn't get out of their house very much. And that's simply, it's the neighbors being more aware of the needs of their neighbors is really the underlying part of that. We specifically tell our friendly visitors and their clients that our visitors cannot do nursing, bathroom care, meals care. That's up to professionals, but we don't have the training skill set for that sort of thing. We'd like to see that program get more publicity and more demand, because some of the volunteers, frankly, haven't been called upon yet. So that's one of the things we'll discuss with the public who comes to our annual meeting this Sunday afternoon, is how can we get that word out more efficiently. Chores Corps got started, and it's sort of like Friendly Visitors, except there's a chore involved. Somebody wants their snow shoveled, their ice chipped away from their sidewalk, their leaves raked, light bulb changed. It has a specific task in mind, and the volunteers for that program, I believe there's a half dozen or so,
Yep, at least.
are willing to do simple carpentry, replace a door lock, but nothing complex or complicated, which we're prepared to put together a list of local service providers for things that are a bit more complicated and for which you need specific skills or a more complicated task. What have I missed here? I think I've got everything except the welcome baskets. And this was an idea that one of our board members said, couldn't we do welcome baskets, because they noticed that similar groups in other towns do that. And we work with Lori to find out when somebody new comes to town, or neighbors will refer us to their neighbors. And is there a number of how many welcome baskets?
Well, as of the end of the fiscal year, which was June 30th, there had only been one. But there have been 2 or 3 since then.
Yeah, that's something that, there's not that many newcomers coming to town, but
Yeah.
the ones that do come and we hear about, we will call them and make an appointment to deliver the welcome basket. We have had good response for volunteer donations from local sugar producers, other merchants and private individuals who do handicrafts. There's one particular individual who's been very productive in that regard and put something personal into the basket for members of the incoming family. So there we are. One program that probably will get some good discussion this Sunday is instituting social and educational programs. The previous iteration of Dummerston Care did have occasional afternoon informational programs, sometimes connected with a lunch. The crew that put that together kind of got burnt out and kind of begged off from continuing it. But we had this program month and a half ago about aging in place, and that was one of the things that got a lot of discussion in that program, was opportunities for those who can't get out of the house but would like to spend more of their waning years at their own home, to get involved in social activities, particularly if they live alone, don't have particularly family close by or close friends, to get together with other people like them, to go to a movie together, or to do an exercise program together, or a games day, or whatever. So that's something you may hear about in our annual report next year.
Okay.
And we hope that all of you received your personal invitation for the annual meeting, Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock over here at the church. And we very much would like each of you to be there. Bring your spouse, significant other, neighbors, whomever.
We'll have cider and donuts.
No, I will not be there, unfortunately. I'll be out of town at a baseball game, but I have plans. So, hey, just a couple of things.
Yes.
First of all, thank you very much for everything you've done. I think this is a community-based organization for the community that really deserves the support of the town. So I think what you're building upon or rebuilding, I think, is a great thing for Dummerston. But you may have said it and I missed it. Do you really rely on people contacting you, or do you have like an outreach program? Like, do you hear about like maybe? Okay, so you do reach out and contact people who you think some people might not want to call.
We need to be a little bit more imaginative and proactive in our outreach. So far, it's been, Laurie's email list is probably the most comprehensive. We're developing our own email list thanks to Winnie Jones, who volunteered to very efficiently put it together on MailChimp. And that list has, 150 or more names. But Laurie's list is really the most comprehensive. And of course, we have an article in each issue of the Views, etc.
When we hear about somebody who may be in need of our services or who may benefit from our services, usually Bill Schmidt will send them a note, hey, just want to make sure you know about Dummerston Cares, and here are some of the things we can do for you.
Right, I can see it's a little bit sensitive. You
Oh, yeah,
wanna be careful, but yeah, that's okay. That's good.
HIPAA and everything, we have been in contact with the discharge planners and so on at the local hospitals at Dartmouth and Brattleboro and Grace Cottage, so that they know about us and can tell patients. They can tell the patients about us. They can't tell us about the
Right.
patients.
Sure. Okay. And then the other thing I'd say is, but it looks like by your donations and your amount, really, so far you're kind of estimating about $1,000 shortfall in your budget. Does that sound fair?
Well, I look at it as we're spending $1,000 that we took in last year, because we didn't spend a whole lot last year because we were just getting our feet on the ground.
Okay.
But
Even though you had a cash balance of $5,600.
at the end of the year, yeah. Because we took in some nice donations, but we didn't spend a whole lot. Because we were still organizing and figuring out our programs and so on. But now that we are off and running, we're gonna spend some of that money.
Yeah, see, I mean, that's great. It's just 4,400. You do a lot for 4,400.
Yeah, you do, yeah.
So I guess we'll just plan on seeing that. And then the last thing I'll say is, just for myself, I mean, and you don't have to answer this now, but I mean, what can the select board do to help you, as you go through this? I mean, I would be curious to know, because I would be, if there's anything, are you able to contact the people you need to, or what? I think your program is what the town needs for this kind of a
Thank
thing.
you.
So I guess, and again, don't answer that, but if there's something that we can do, or
Okay.
you could certainly
We will.
contact me, and I will,
Sure.
be happy to bring it up and try to get it on the agenda.
So far, things have gone well.
Yep.
Bill Schmidt is a very capable organizer and has brought together a good functioning board. We meet every month, and so far we've been able to handle everything. We meet at the church and have support from them too.
I'd just like to add that we didn't really invent all this in a vacuum. We have learned a lot from our neighboring towns, particularly Guilford, Putney, Westminster, the Upper Valley.
Grafton.
It's Grafton and Athens that together in one organization. And in that regard, Guilford and I believe Westminster both have paid staff. And that's an expense, you know, that we're not eager to jump to that, but it might in the future. The administrative part might be such that a volunteer board might get a little bit overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think we all struggle for volunteers, you know, everywhere right now, yeah.
So is there a specific amount of money that you're asking for from the town for this, for the next fiscal year?
Well, in the budget for the current year,
There's 800.
there's 800 in there.
Which we received that check this week, by the way.
Did we? Okay.
I'm the one who goes to the mailbox every day to see what's arrived. So thank you very much for that check.
Yeah, I think if we can keep it at that level, we will put it to good use. If you wanna give us more, we'll find a use for it, but, you know, we're not struggling financially at this point.
I think you'll find we won't be bashful in asking for more if we feel we need it.
So, and people can send you donations.
Absolutely, and
Tax
people do.
deductible?
Sure.
Yep.
People do.
I've got a question, I don't know if it's ever come up or if you've even considered it, but do you do any means testing? If folks ask.
The only
Yeah.
thing that has a means testing in it is the heat fund, the fuel fund.
Yeah.
And, now, nobody asked for help this year, but, my suggestion was, and I think the board voted on it, in fact, I know the board voted on it, that we will use the household income as it's applied for your property tax relief or your renter's rebate. And we will base the need for heat assistance on the filling out of that form. We'll use that form rather than invent our own.
Okay.
I think it goes without saying, all of our services are cost-free. There's no reimbursement for mileage for transportation or any other expenses that volunteers might incur. The volunteers themselves can take a tax deduction for the mileage that they contribute, if they so desire. But of course, if one of the clients wants to make a monetary contribution after receiving the service, it won't be refused, but it's never asked for.
So do you have any interface with the school, with the Dummerston Elementary School?
Not yet. I think that's something that we will reach out to them at some point, you know, especially now that school's back in session and so on, because Dummerston Cares offers services to anyone irrespective of their age.
Right,
We're not the seniors only.
right, well, and the heat fund obviously is
Yes.
an example of that,
Yes,
but
yeah,
also
the school
in the
nurse might
interest
put-
of neighbors helping neighbors, the school is our one, you know, large community gathering place, and kids have grandparents, and they have neighbors who live
Yep.
across the street who are, so it's a connector in a big way.
That's an excellent suggestion. Also, at the meeting Sunday, you will meet representatives from Three Generation Collaboration. Have you heard of this organization?
I think you told me about it, Bill, yeah.
It's a group that has organized themselves in the West River Valley only. So Route 5 people need not apply, apparently. However, they're anxious to link with us in creating opportunities for the youngest the middle and the oldest generations to serve and meet each other.
Great. Well, this was really informative and impressive.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Hope to see those of you who can make it Sunday afternoon.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good job.
So,
I don't know mistakes.
Okay, I will.
okay, so now,
Okay.
ready? No, you're next, you're next. Maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yes. I'm Kristen Mihalik. I am the Cooperative Internship Coordinator at the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation.
I'm RT Brown. I'm the Wyndham County Economic Development Programs Project Manager, and I have a new playful title called Head Instigator.
And I'm Rose Belia, I'm the Director of Regional Economic Development and Strategies and Programs.
I'm sorry, I missed your name?
Kristen Mihalik.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having us tonight. We really appreciate it. I'll just give a brief update on our workforce. Some of the things that I know that you're familiar with is our young professionals continuing to have events. We hosted one here in Dummerston a few weeks ago. We also are continuing our high school career awareness program in all 4 of our Windham County high schools, where we're going in and we're teaching sophomores, juniors, seniors about the careers and opportunities that are available here in the Windham County region. So we're continuing that again. The program that I run, the college internship program, is for any currently enrolled college student or recent graduate looking for paid internship opportunities with Windham County businesses. So if you know of a currently enrolled college student or soon-to-be graduate, have them reach out to me. A really wide variety of industries. And I'm happy to report that this past summer we've placed 10 interns in paid internships, which brings our total since 2014 to 78 interns placed in paid internships with businesses here in Windham County, and 16 of which have led to full-time employment. So that's a little update about some of our workforce programs. I wanted to keep that brief, but I want to pass it to RT and then to Laura to really update you on 2 new initiatives and programs that we have at the BDCC.
How's everyone? Today we, I guess, officially launched a program called the Rural Micro Entrepreneur Assistance Program. And I brought a couple of packets here that I'm happy to leave if you'd be interested. This was the presentation that I provided to what I would call traditional lenders like banks, Federal Savings and Loan, and People's Bank, because it's really a partnership. This is a program that helps small businesses, emerging businesses that can't get traditional financing. So entrepreneurs who are starting new businesses need 2 things. They need low fixed costs and they need access to capital. So this helps put those pieces together for them. There's also information in here in this packet. On the left-hand side is the Windham County Economic Development Program's annual report, which was just produced about 2 weeks ago. And then on the right side, there's program information about the Rural Micro Entrepreneur Program. So our philosophy is it actually can't, it's structured so that it can't compete with a traditional lender. This has to be in first position. And the message to folks is really that we are there to help an emerging business and surround them with the resources that they need to get off the ground. Because with this program, not only came the funds to loan to them, but also a grant that we can apply to provide them with technical assistance, and that can mean anything. That could be marketing, that could be help you with your business plan, that could mean an architect to help design the space that you need at a location to fulfill your business needs. So it's very broad. It's a USDA funded program. So that's the latest and greatest thing in my world. I do want to, as the Dummerston Cares folks were talking, I think I gathered that they don't have a physical location. Is that correct? They probably work out of maybe the community center?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. one program, and Laura might have to jump in here because this is not my area. We are waiting to hear from, I think it's USDA, on a grant that helps community facilities access USDA potential grants and loans. So it's USDA has a tremendous amount of programs, and this is called the Community Facilities Program. And it's complicated enough that they provide grants to organizations like ours to help communities understand how to access those funds. Does that make sense? Because it seems convoluted to me.
That seems like a government program.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I know we're supposed to hear mid-September as to whether or not we get that,
Right.
but there might be an opportunity to reconnect.
Well, there could be other community facilities in Dummerston.
Yeah,
also.
absolutely.
I think you said there's a phone somewhere, I don't know.
Yeah, in the community center.
I
Yeah.
don't know if there's needs at the community center.
So should that come
there's always
through?
needs
Should
there.
that come through?
There are.
Yes, I'd love to, connect the dots if it's appropriate.
And all of, just to note, on this handouts that we gave provides all of our contact information for all of us, so if you're interested, feel free to reach out. And then I think that's a great segue into Laura, as the second page really, sorry, I'm stealing your thunder, relates to the town of Dummerston specifically, and some key data points that I'll pass to Laura to kind of go over and talk about and why we have this here today.
So, hi everybody. Of course, all of this kind of revolves around our SeVEDS, our 5-year economic development strategy, our Wyndham Regional SeVEDS, and implementation of it. What we've been doing with our municipalities as we're going out this fall is talking about the upcoming renewal of the 5-year comprehensive economic development strategy. It has to be done every 5 years. The last one was finished in 2014. So we'll be going through the SeVEDS process with an end date in mind of 2019. The last process was very intentionally grassroots, regional, looking for participation, looking for ground truthing, looking for people to say, you have no idea what you're talking about, that data doesn't make sense here, why aren't you looking at this? And so that process will be getting underway, as I think we've told you before, maybe not, that will now be a Wyndham and Bennington comprehensive economic development strategy. We don't think that all of the programs that will come out of that are implementable across southern Vermont. We're not looking to create a kind of super organization, but we think that the demographics and data are similar enough that we'll be able to kind of support different implementation programs. So having said that process we hope to have kick off this fall and winter and spring. And part of developing the SeVEDS is really going out to our communities, to our businesses, to our towns, and talking about data and helping us all kind of get on the same page about what the situation is, what we're looking at. So this fall, summer, as Kristen's been scheduling us, we've been going out and sharing the same 2 pieces of data with our municipalities and starting to kind of get some reactions from folks as we're starting to think about our SeVEDS and developing it and what strategies. So those are the data points that you have in front of you. I can tell you that,
Second page?
yep, the second page.
Second page.
Thank you. I was
Awesome.
lost.
Second page, paperclip behind.
Okay, great.
The second page is giving you your age demographic in Dummerston, and this demographic, this kind of trend, we see it's pretty similar in most of our smaller towns in Wyndham County. You can see we, right in our very young professionals age group where we're trying to focus, we've got a pretty big hole there. And that is not necessarily, we feel like, hopeful about our future. So of course our recruitment and retention programs are really focused on those folks and others. The next group up, the 30s, also pretty low. These are our prime kind of parents. I'm sure we all are seeing this in our schools as well as our employers. So we think this is, people have been intrigued by this. I don't know, were folks here aware of this?
So what's the
That's also helpful
total,
now.
Laura?
Of population?
Yeah, I see all of the numbers, but I wonder, is there a total?
Yes, but
I'll add
that is
them up.
not.
Okay, I'll
That
add
is
them
not.
up.
We can, and the other piece, Geraldine, when we have gone and presented this data, it has prompted a lot of questions, and we've come back with additional information.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, as you're looking at this, if there's other key pieces that we can, you know, some folks have said, hey, could we see what that was in
Mhm.
2000?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is very helpful, it's just, I was looking for the total. and
Yeah,
that
sorry.
was right in
It's not
front of
like
me.
that. But we'll-
It should be about 1,800.
Well, that's what I wanted to compare it to, you know, my impression is that we're 1,800, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was looking at these numbers and I wasn't, anyways, well, just verify that.
So that's kind of our
Mhm.
numbers by age, and then the commuter data is something that we're really interested in your reaction to this and any kind of thinking that you have on this. What we're finding is I think Dummerston has a pretty typical mean travel time. You know, we find that most of our towns are traveling quite a distance. The towns where I live, or the Deerfield Valley, there's I think a little bit bigger, it's almost 30 minutes, the mean travel time, I think.
25% of Dummerston commutes 29 minutes.
Yes, yeah. So we're seeing that in all of our towns, that there's a pretty significant commuter time. We think, so we're interested in this for a couple of reasons. First of all, we're trying to figure out where our regional workforce, where they're traveling to. I mean, we can see that data, but also kind of wanting to understand from you, you know, any impacts or key pieces, you know, like we have a bus or we have a van pool that goes to Dartmouth, you know, once a week or all week, you know, driving folks. That information is helpful to know. And we think it's good for our municipalities. A lot of them have been kind of shocked to see the travel time that folks are making.
So you think a half an hour is a significant commuter time?
It's outside of Dummerston,
Okay,
and so where are those people going,
okay.
right? So we think, you
I
know,
don't
the
think
greater
that's
labor
bad.
show.
Yeah, it doesn't seem
I don't
like
think
it's
significant.
Yeah, right.
That's how far I drive
Right.
every day. I mean, it doesn't seem significant either, but sometimes people are surprised.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes people are surprised by that. And also the information about where that is happening, we think is
Yeah,
interesting
yeah.
to us.
And I, not to put you on the spot, Laura, but I believe there were some surprises in the valley with regards to the distance people were traveling and then the wages that those people were earning for that travel.
Right, well, that's what, you get this data and then you put it together with other data and
Yes.
then it starts to tell a story.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think it's awesome that you've come to us with this simple thing of two different pieces of data
Yes.
that generate a conversation. That's awesome.
Yes.
What perspective it creates, you know, begs more detail and also the comparison, you know, how are we the same and different from other rural communities, and what's the difference between a rural community and an urban community in terms of what you would see, so.
I think to that point, Geraldine, I think it's important to know that, you know, this is exactly what we're going to be doing with the SeVEDS. We're getting ready to renew it, so we'll be looking at this data across the board and across southern Vermont to say, okay, we have this data now, what story is this telling us, and what actions, what goals, objectives kind of need to be modified in order to change these. Because we know that, especially from the population, that it needs to be improved.
Now, what jumps out to me is that, I mean, this is 5 minute increments.
Yeah.
And you've got 20 to 24 minutes, 17%, 25 to 29, 1.6, and then it jumps back up to 12%.
Right.
And I guess what I was thinking is maybe it's because, those 20 to 24 minutes, it's folks working in Brattleboro would be my guess.
20 to 24? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. You know, we know the Keene kind of labor, that area is huge for Windham County. We also know a lot of folks, particularly the more north we had, you know, there's a lot of Dartmouth, Magnet, and there's also down 91, you know, in the Deerfield area.
Amherst.
Yeah, Amherst area. So this, you know, as we said, this is more of a kind of an initial conversation with all of you, with all of our municipalities, saying these are the types of pieces of data that we are examining, that we will be examining, that we hope that you will weigh in on?
Yeah, so the next piece for me
Yeah.
about this is, so what questions do we ask? Not making statements about it and saying, this is significant, or this needs to be fixed, or this needs to be changed, but, what's helpful to us is just the way you presented it, which is awesome, 2 pieces of data instead of a whole, whatever. And then from the data of age in a community, one would ask these 5 questions to help us start thinking and have an intelligent conversation about it. Because I don't quite, this is interesting and it takes me a little while to take it in, but I don't want to get to conclusions too quickly.
So a few prompts.
Yeah,
coming
some
in
prompts
would be
in a
just
form
helpful.
of a question.
Yep.
And, for both of these.
Yep.
Anyway, that would be really useful.
That's
I
a
think
great.
we're gonna spend a lot of time studying this chart, you're gonna come to the very simple conclusion. People who are 20 to 29 can't afford to live here, and then they move back here when they get a little bit older. But I'll just throw that out, and we'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, we see that trend happening across all of rural America, really, so.
Well, and then that's the other thing is, so the 5 prompt questions, and then what are the trends that other communities, like communities, are seeing? And are we within those trends? And then what does that mean in terms of policies, grant funding, program goals and
Right.
targets?
Right. We have on our SeVEDS board, we have folks that will ask the question, is it actually appropriate for us to be focusing on that demographic and thinking about how to increase that, or should we be focusing on the much larger group of folks?
Yeah, I mean, my
And
feeling is
saying-
kids have to go away.
Yeah.
It's really good that they go away.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
But
absolutely. Maybe somebody else's kids could go away here, but
Yeah.
do we focus on?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, do we focus on that larger cohort and think about how can we tie that, because we know from our work that our employers, are challenged to have enough staff,
Yeah.
and particularly for highly skilled positions.
I just want to say that I really appreciate that you guys do this kind of thinking, because as a select board, we're kind of like head down in our town, and that's
Doing
our
your
job.
job.
That's our
Yes.
job. And so you help us to bring our head up and kind of look at the wider world, and then we look back at ourselves in a richer, deeper way. So I appreciate your.
Thank you.
And we appreciate your work, which hopefully is informing us. Because, that what's happening here is not the same as what's happening in Dummerston, and it's not the same as what's happening not in Dummerston, in Brattleboro, excuse me, and it's not the same as what's happening in Halifax. So just kind of making sure that we have an understanding of, the
Yeah.
various challenges and opportunities.
Right.
So
Yeah, good.
that's our spiel.
Okay.
How do we do? So do we have follow up on this? So Geraldine's looking for the number, the total, which we can do.
And then the 5 calls.
Well, we know the number.
Yeah,
We know not to do that.
You know, you know.
Are you gonna try and break
No.
Exactly.
I can add it up too.
I have no questions.
If you have any questions about this stuff, please
Okay.
feel free to reach
Sure,
out.
we'll
Yeah, leave us a
share
copy.
it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, leave it with 2
Great,
copies.
thank you for having us.
Yes,
Thank you.
thanks very much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening. I know you might think we're coffee.
No, I don't need it. I know there's not enough employees around already.
All right, great. Okay, let's see. So I apologize, we're usually very, punctual, but we're running behind today. With everyone's permission, could we jump to new business and discuss the triple net lease for the Dummerston school fields?
Yes, that would
Please
be
do.
fine.
And if you want to come up, I think these seats are warm.
Pretty warm, yeah.
Already?
They've been filled since about 5 o'clock.
Nothing against Jess, we always vie for who's furthest away from the camera.
No,
Except her Zoom is not working.
Yeah, her
so
Zoom's
you're
not
lucky.
working.
It's
You're
a
lucky.
sport we play at the school board level.
I think we're all fuzzy, I'm not sure.
So, we received the lease that you sent us. And, see, I had hoped that you guys had all gone away, when you brought this subject up several months ago. But you presented out, so it seems as though it's still an issue that you'd like to discuss.
Act 46 has not gone away,
Okay.
and things are percolating along. The articles were approved by the study committee. It will go to a vote on the 7th of November.
Okay.
If that happens, we have, I think it's almost 2 years before the actual merger would take place, if the vote passes in all the towns. That is the articles are structured at this point that all the towns have to say yes. So it may not come to pass, but I think it's worth keeping the conversation going so that we're thinking about it if we have to do it in short order before December or something, that we have to make a decision about this.
If the merger takes place, if it was a positive or a vote that approved it, you say there are 2 years before the merger.
And so I'm not sure what happens with the property, but I think we have to be saying that this is what we want to do before the vote takes place, because it is an asset, it's a part of the property, so I think we'd have to disclose to everybody before the November 7th vote that we plan to segregate the fields from the school.
Has the school board voted on the matter?
No. We have voted previously on a very similar set of articles, and the vote was 4 against 1 for the merger. We have not, the final articles were completed on Monday, and we had a meeting on Tuesday, and the articles are about 30 pages.
Well,
So I didn't think it was fair to have a vote when people had 1 day to read 30 pages.
well, my question is on the lease. Has the board taken a position on this?
I think the board has thought it would be a good idea, and that we should discuss it further with the select board, because it's a sort of a joint decision. So to say, I'm just trying to think back, I think the board thought that it was worth doing. And I could go back to votes, but I don't know off the top of my head, was it?
I don't think we formally voted to separate the fields, but we have discussed at our meetings to back up what Christine is saying. I think the idea was to have a conversation with you, the select board, to see what you all thought of our idea, and if it was something the town was interested in taking on and keeping within the town regardless of what happens under Act 46. I think, it's driven by the idea that, well, there's another community that's done this with significantly larger lands, but has segregated lands that were under the school's ownership, under the direction of the school directors, and has granted those to the town or a nonprofit. I'm actually not sure what the entity that they devised them to. However, it's something that can be done, obviously, before there's a vote. And so, while it's not right up against that time, we're getting kind of close to the time where we should make a decision both at the school board level and at the town level. I know that Christina came and had conversations with you before and reported back to us that there was some discussion, but I don't know that there was an overwhelmingly, I don't know if you guys have had a vote either on whether you would, obviously.
No, we
probably
didn't. We
not.
didn't have a vote.
Right, and so perhaps that's the next step. Is it something that both the school board and the town would like to pursue, and then we can negotiate what the terms of that would be, independent, outside of that structure.
I know you said, I think the articles have changed, but it seems like before, wasn't there an option if whatever the property is gonna get sold, that the town you could have bought it back for,
If they don't,
before it goes for sale, I guess, is.
so I don't have the articles in front of me, I don't
Yeah.
carry that big pile, but
In
if
all
they,
likelihood, but the other concern is that what happens if Dummerston, being centrally located amongst these spread out school districts, or presently spread out school districts, becomes a really attractive site for second high school, or a middle school that we can't see 50 years into the future, or 75 years into the future, even 20 years into the can't see into the future, so we don't know, but it's nice flat land right along Route 5 that could be used as school purposes and kind of split, the town's interests away from what a consolidated board's interests for that land may be. Because if they continued, my understanding, without looking at the articles right now, is that if they continued to use it for school purposes, it would never come up for sale, and thus they would never have they would never present the option to the town to be the first purchaser.
So the primary concern is if it stays a school, that they could build on the land.
Well, they could build on the land. They could also, say that all the middle school football there, I don't even know that you can't play your town rec games here. You need to go find another space because we've reserved that field for, something that is not in the town's interest necessarily.
The unified
But it's in
school
the
district.
unified school district's interest to, spread out resources, to have a nice flat field for their varsity soccer. I don't know.
So the lease, the ownership of these fields
Mhm.
is transferred to the town for $1 and then leased back to the school. Do I have that right?
Right.
So if this merger goes through, is it leased back to the whole district? And then so they could decide what to do with it, right? So, or to have.
Under
Under
the terms of the lease.
Yeah.
Okay, but as far as, you're concerned about scheduling the football team or something, they would be able to do that under the lease, right?
I think, couldn't we have the terms of the lease be that it is for the use of the Dummerston School recreation facility as it's traditionally been done? Couldn't that be a term of the lease?
I would think you can write in.
Is that in the lease that you sent us?
I don't believe it's in the lease that I sent you. I'm sorry, I didn't really catch all. This is why it's important, I think, to have this conversation, is to kind of flesh some of these ideas out and to see how those could be incorporated into a lease.
So my other question, I was confused earlier. So the Dummerston School Board is behind or is in support of doing this lease?
We're in support of exploring the
Yeah,
options, I
yeah.
think is the safest way
Yeah.
to say it at this point in time. There's been no formal vote, but we, as a board, have voted, I believe, to
We vote
have this discussion
with the select
and
board.
to send you
Okay,
guys
so
a draft.
you have had a vote to do
Yeah.
that, so
Yes.
it's just not a couple of rogue
No.
doing this, okay? So the board is behind this.
So is a third option that,
Yes.
there could be a nonprofit or
Absolutely.
or a different group that actually oversaw the fields, so we did get it separated from the school, but the town then wasn't forced with maintaining and whatever, scheduling and whatever, so has that been explored even minutely? Okay, all right.
We're not gonna debate the merits of Act 46 tonight.
I hope not.
With that said, if you look at properties in Vermont compared to similarly priced properties around the country, our property taxes are perhaps twice, sometimes 3 times as much as other communities, and we're faced with the declining enrollment and fixed costs. And Act 46 was an effort to rein in some of those costs. My concern is, what message, let's say Act 46 does go through, what message would that impart to this new entity if the town of Dummerston says, well, we don't trust the judgment of this new entity, with our sacred ball fields and property. And, I've heard talk about, concern that it's going to be converted to a jail, for instance. And I think that that's pretty crazy. So I guess my biggest concern for both of you is just really the message it would impart, if we decide, as a town to go down this road, before this, should we in fact consolidate?
I would flip the question back to you and say what message has already been conveyed by a neighboring town that has actually not only contemplated this, but has actually taken the steps to formally convey away what was an asset of their school and would have been a common asset to all the schools within a super district.
Which town is that?
That's the town of Putney.
He's referring to the town forest, right?
Right.
That's correct.
Okay,
Which is not really developable, I don't believe.
right. Well, I feel, I guess, a little differently about a forest than, school school grounds.
Yeah, well, whatever, regardless, just because they sent a message, doesn't mean we have to send a message, but beyond that, I mean, I guess my concern with this would be, okay, so are we getting one evil for another? I mean, like, that ball field, it's used for a Babe Ruth ball field, why could not the Little League or someone else come and use it? It's an option, there's, one group's gonna say this can be done, but the group that, we're gonna potentially lease it to, maybe we don't like their rules either. So I guess the suggestion seems to be, we don't know what they're gonna do, but we don't like what they're gonna do, so we wanna take it over or get control of it and use it for what we wanna do, but who's to say what, we or they? I mean, what's the
Well-
benefit of either one, I guess?
I think it's probably safe to say that up until today, it's been an asset for the entire town of Dummerston and not just the school.
Mhm.
And so I think the school board's idea in looking at this possibility is that, okay, well, it's been an asset to the town, so how does it continue to be an asset for the town as a whole? And so, yeah, there is an element of seeking some sort of control over what happens with that land for the greater good of the town of Dummerston into the foreseeable future. Because regardless of the merits up or down of Act 46, certainly it's pretty clear that the control issue is something that would be removed from the local town of Dummerston School Board because it would cease to exist. So
No, I just think we need to be aware, the greater good, well, who's deciding the greater good? Is it this side or this side? I mean,
Well, the
it's
greater
debatable.
good for whom? I think that's the question. Right now, it's the greater good for the town of Dummerston. And I'm hearing that the concern is then it's the greater good for this much wider community, which may not serve Dummerston's needs. Is
one
that
can
fair?
anticipate a position where the larger, more towns' interests or more schools' interests would collide with what Dummerston believes might be in its best interest. Yes.
And so you're saying
So
to
there's some
preserve
tension.
that, let the town own the fields.
Yes.
I don't think if you had to weigh the elderly soccer player team versus the Putney Little League, that the girls softball, how could a unified school district give use of a field to the elderly Dummerston soccer players over the unified district that was looking for a place for the girls to play soccer that day from another town? So I think it would become more difficult to schedule those things that have been traditionally done by our rec board groups.
So I think this leads me kind of to my point. I would like to see us to definitely look into a nonprofit or a different structure. I'm not against trying to separate it, because I think it's a unique facility that Dummerston utilizes, and I think we utilize it for a lot of different programs that we would not want to lose control of. But I also would like to see it managed by somebody other than the select board. I know we're not gonna manage it, but I wish we could look into a separate entity, because there's gonna be income that could be generated from it, and from other teams that might wanna utilize the fields, and it's a pretty unique field to the town of Dummerston, so I personally don't disagree with wanting to look at separating it. Yeah, go ahead, yep.
If we make a lease and lease it back to the school board, that's how it is right now. But then the school board ceases to exist because it's the unified. Who is the lease with?
Be the unified union district.
Okay, so we'd be leasing it back to them.
Back to who was gonna own it anyway,
Yeah,
if we don't.
and so.
But I do think Christina or Michael's right. I mean, we could write the lease in such a way that our programs have,
Priority.
I don't know about priority, but have standing in the lease for,
Okay.
I'm sure we could protect our interest. I mean, we have a pretty unique recreational program, I think, and I understand not wanting to lose the use of our own field.
Mhm.
Or have it developed for some other structure,
Okay.
but I'd like us to look at other options other than actually the town.
By us? Who do you mean by that? Who would be the us that you would be looking at?
Well, I would just like to see possibly a nonprofit that actually ran that program separately than because the school board's not gonna exist. We're probably not gonna wanna take on that responsibility, so somebody's gonna would have to handle scheduling and all that, so. I would just like that option looked into.
So we're looking for more than just the ball field, looking at the school as well, right?
No,
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 just
no.
the property,
Fields.
Okay.
just the ball field. Yeah, when the school's would go into the district,
Okay.
or not.
So it would be like the school is this part of the.
I understand.
School with the playground
With
and-
the, you know,
Yep,
Yeah.
okay.
the playground.
And so, the reason it's easier to look at the town to do this is because it already exists.
Town exists.
A nonprofit would
Yeah.
need a staff and a board and pay.
Dummerston cares.
About our fields.
Community center. Well, we own the community center. That's us. That's one of the burdens the
So-
town
Well, we actually lease it
bears.
to somebody else, so, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, we're not.
So,
we
But isn't
lease it
that
to
the
somebody
same?
else.
So it's
No,
something
we
that could,
lease it to somebody else.
okay, go ahead.
something that could be considered also is, you know, as long as the assignability clause in the lease was strong, you could have the possibility of assigning it to a future entity that would assume the responsibilities and duties before the supervisory union
rec board.
board. Well, I think the rec board would need to probably have a little bit different structure before it
Yeah.
was up and running
Mhm.
to assume a lease like that. And so I think the other idea about having the town, frankly, is the liability side of things. To just be perfectly blunt and not try to keep anything under the table, but the town would need to add it to its insurance policy, just kind of like the school has
First
it on
time
is
we
insurance.
discussed this was,
But although, I'm sorry,
okay,
we're doing a triple net lease, so whoever is the holder of the lease would be required to have the insurance.
Just a couple things. So when the land, just so I know, you're talking so the rec ball field, there's two rec ball fields, and then there's the middle school baseball field, and then the soccer field. Is that basically the extent of the land that you're looking at?
Yeah.
And now isn't the school's well and septic over on that land too?
Septic is, a well's up the road.
The wells up the road to the septic. So that would just, they'd have to have an easement. Anyway, it's just something to look
Yeah.
at, but that's on it, right?
Septic's very close over the school.
Septic is very close when you park there.
Yeah.
Watch some games sometimes.
You know
Oh,
when
good
you're
figure out
out.
That's a
your
good
answer.
question.
Behind it.
Yeah,
That
that's
is
a
a
really
very
good
good
question,
question.
though, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my confusion is some of the opponents of Act 46, as I said earlier, expressed concern about the school perhaps becoming a jail or some.
No, they were concerned about something being built on that
And
property, and it has to be for
Okay.
educational use, so it'd have to be maybe a reform school as opposed to a
They
jail.
didn't use it.
A re-education facility or
Dummerston
something.
Care School.
They didn't use it.
Yeah,
So that's always been in the articles, that's never been an issue that they could do that. I mean, I guess if the town was not interested in buying it, they would sell it to the highest bidder. If Dummerston School were to be closed and the select board did not buy it, it is this future unified, should it come to pass, it's the future unified districts. They can do whatever they want with it. They can
Right.
sell it, they can sell it to a jail, to a McDonald's, to whatever you would, Walmart, whatever you'd like to have there.
Mhm.
So but that's down the road.
mhm. So, what would you like to do?
Well, what was the goal here?
I think they presented this lease and would like us to, sign it.
So it's,
No,
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 that was
okay.
not a lease ready to sign.
No,
Yeah.
I did.
it's a draft.
Okay,
Yeah, you have to know Zeke. He likes to draw and quarter us a little bit, get our attention.
yeah, it's been a long meeting already.
Yeah,
I'm just
and we haven't
trying,
even got to our business yet.
just trying to keep them awake. So, you wanna keep talking? You wanna keep working on this? Is that what you,
well, Steve has asked them to look into a third option.
yeah, I didn't see them,
Jumping up and down for that.
wiggling in their seats over that one.
Well, we
Yeah.
have a pretty, we're looking at alternative governance structures as a board. We're educating people about Act 46. We're having meetings in the next 2 months. I pretty much have 2 or 3 school board related meetings every week. I'm missing one right now to be here. So it's a little bit harder for us to think about how I'm going to squeeze that in my day
Right.
to create a nonprofit right
Well,
now.
it's
in this-
almost time for us to
Yeah.
start thinking whether we have to paint the white lines on the road. You
Oh,
can see that, you know,
Well, this chunk of time
Everybody's
right
got
here
problems.
particularly.
we're getting maxed out too. here.
Okay, so
Uh-uh.
that's not gonna be explored, so that's an option that either we have to explore or it gets
Well,
taken off the table.
yeah, here's, if I may, add to that part of the conversation, I think an assignability clause within the lease that was strong enough would allow for, you know, written assignment of the lease on the terms, you know, between the holder of the lease and the assignee of the lease, which could be a third-party nonprofit entity at some point in the future, would be a possibility, but it might not get fleshed out in the next couple of weeks. But that, I mean, I do think that's a common way that things like that are known to happen, or there's the ability.
And then, has the rec board been involved in any of this discussion or aware of any of
Board's
this?
like two people trying to get soccer up and running right now.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So,
Do you think there's any, like, again, hypothetical, but we do this, we make this lease so restrictive that the school, whoever takes it over, would just say, well, it's too hard, so we're not gonna have a soccer team, or we're not gonna have a baseball team? Who would make that? Was that the principal, or is that the school board? You know, I mean, it's hard enough for sports now, I guess I think that's a valid concern, where they may be like, you know what, thanks for offering us the lease, but we don't want it. We'll just not have a soccer team or a baseball team.
One of the challenges and goals of Act 46 is that everybody has the same thing.
Mhm.
So if Putney has those activities, they would have to find a place for Dummerston to have those activities. If Guilford has them, if Academy has them, we all, especially in something as big a bucket like
Right.
athletics, which is clearly linked to student success and student health and good outcomes for students, it'd be a really hard sell that they would discontinue those activities. I can't even, so because you
Or
have to offer pretty much.
You guys gotta go to
the same-
Brattleboro to play soccer, you gotta go to Putney to play soccer. You know, it's just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's also, again, part of the concern is that without the element of control, at least at this point in time, you know, kind of foreseeing into the future, oh, well, third graders and fourth graders, you gotta go down to the West River Field, you know? All the fifth and sixth graders have to go up to Putney, all, you know.
And there's that field sitting there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I was gonna say, before we decide on the matter, I would really like the school board to vote on the matter. You know, I'd like some direction from you folks, because it's school property after all.
And would
what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean,
they-
do they want the property separated? You know, is this something that you are pursuing? I know you've talked
That's
about
what
it,
I was saying, yeah.
but you haven't had a
We haven't-
vote on it.
Well, we haven't made a vote on it, but it's a two-way street. It's like you
Yeah.
need a dance partner to be able to convey. I mean, obviously you can convey property to pretty much anyone without them knowing. It's not really recommended, you know, if there's not going to be a future agreement about how a lease would look. And so this is a part of that process. And in my mind, I think we made a preliminary determination at the school board level. Please correct me if I'm overstating it, that we would explore it to see this would be a viable possibility with you all, the town, the select board, so.
You have to have our support in order to take it to the
Well,
school.
we would certainly like your support, and that the idea is not something that you would in no way consider whatsoever,
Right.
and
I-
don't want any possibility of it happening at all. I mean,
Yeah, I don't think we may have some reservations and questions still. I'm not getting the sense that we're adamantly
Right.
opposed to this. Is that right?
Right.
I would agree with that,
Yeah,
yeah.
so.
Okay.
And so would your hope and expectation be that there would be some kind of agreement, decision, and signed lease before the November 7th vote?
Yeah, isn't that what you said earlier?
Yeah, I thought that's
That
what.
would be.
That was the whole idea,
optimal.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and my question is, you know, can this be implemented after the November 7th vote?
It's an open question at this point. I don't really know the answer to that one, but it'd certainly be looked at.
Yeah. I mean, I guess just back.
Well, we
here.
wouldn't be,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess it depends on the transition.
I mean, you heard what I said before to answer your question. I guess I'd have to say at this point, I would be opposed to this.
I'm just thinking about your question because the school board still exists and can do, and is pretty much in control, so I don't see why we couldn't
I don't
convey
either.
something. I mean, we could sell the school for $1 to you if we wanted to, so,
Mhm.
because if we can't, you can't, since the municipality still exists of a school district.
It would exist until July 1st of 2018.
Yes, so that would be
That would be.
So
probably
it
the
may
drop
give
dead
us-
date.
some breathing space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
I'm
if
happy
the-
to take it to a vote to the school board, but without knowing if we were voting to do a select board or to look for something else, or the select board wasn't interested. The school board thought it'd be a good idea to discuss it with you, think about, have this conversation, so we've done it, I'm happy to take it back to the school board for a vote.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Anything?
So,
Yeah, I think I would support the separation. Unlike Joe, I think I would support the separation depending on how we could set it up. But we're not voting on it anyway.
right, and I could lean in that direction also.
I think we have more questions than answers right now, but
Yeah. You know, I'd sort of, if we didn't have to do this, if the vote went in a way where we
Mhm.
didn't have to do this, that'd be great. I'd like to leave it as it is, but, and if we did have that window between now and 2018,
18.
it'd be great.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to establish. I'd like to establish if we have that leeway, because then we're dealing with something that has, you know, we sort of know where we are.
Yeah,
Right. And I think we only have a couple of meetings, 3 meetings before the 7th of November.
Yeah, I don't see it as something that we can do before the 7th of November, to make a
You
decision.
know, we would probably, this is just a technical question, you know, we might run it past our attorney
Sure.
and how the town's attorney.
you might have some input on that, yeah.
Yeah, so how would we deal with that? Would we have to find another attorney in order to look at this?
I have not
In your
spoken with
involvement?
my boss, Robert Fisher, the town's attorney, about this matter at all at this point in time. I'd certainly.
I'd sort of have more comfort if you have.
So, would you be establishing a Chinese wall?
Yes, this was the next things out of my mouth. That was that I could establish a Chinese wall between myself and Bob, which means that I won't talk to him at all about this matter in any way, shape, or form. And that
It
he
might
won't
be
talk
good
to
to get some
me
advice from you.
about this matter.
It didn't cost us
But
anything.
to avoid even the appearance of a conflict of
Yeah.
interest,
Yeah.
that's what is typically recommended
Yeah.
for attorneys. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So,
I always know where you're coming from, Steve.
That's
I'm
good.
trying to save some money, I like
Yeah.
that.
yeah, right, because we'd be leasing it back just for $1. That's not gonna pay for much, right?
Well, that,
But you
The-
would
the extra
have to pay
liability.
for yeah.
wouldn't have a liability, wouldn't have
Yeah,
a
yeah.
Well, they do
management.
rent out that ball field to
Landmark.
Landmark,
Yeah,
there's
Landmark
income
is-
there.
Mhm.
yeah.
So-
Does Claude Goins still kind of take charge of the fields there or not anymore?
I think not, because he's not running, he still shows up on the field.
Yeah, I know, he still does a lot of
And
work.
Ron Steck is no longer there, but he's still mowing the fields,
Yeah.
he's coaching at the high school now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But he, Claude is no longer coaching the middle school baseball, so I don't think he's quite as
Quite as
hands-on the
involved,
last,
okay.
last couple of years.
He put in a lot of hours and a lot of work to,
He's
He's
been
got a lot
doing-
invested in those
Yeah.
fields, so he's still
he's
keeping
done
pretty,
well.
pretty
Oh,
close
yes.
eye on him.
He came and directed my husband, among other fathers, about what to do with all the dirt. So he moved into senior management of the field and found a next generation of people to move all that dirt
Yeah.
around. So
Good idea.
yeah.
I just think at this point, we need to keep the discussion
Yeah.
going. I don't
Yeah.
think we're gonna make a decision tonight. I think you've kinda got some of our feelings and,
Yeah, that we would keep on looking at it.
So for the next steps, we will hold a school board vote about the conveyance and maybe see if we can get a lease fleshed out on the Dummerston Town School Board dime. Just a
Sure.
little, that incorporates some of these things as general ideas that we can talk about and make changes on as we see fit, as we think about, sure, if the rec board isn't using it, why wouldn't we let another town use
right,
it?
yeah.
And I think that is a different message, and that's what comes to my mind. Well, sure, I just don't want to kick Reed Miller's team off the soccer field because, it's a little more convenient for another school too. It's a conversation I'd like us to have, so that might be a nice incorporation into it as well. And then,
And you'll
Meet again.
confirm whether we have till July 21st, 2018.
Yes.
And you guys should also consult your counsel on that one too, please.
And I don't know if we want to look into what the extra liability insurance would be, what the cost
Well,
of
if we had a lease where we did not,
Right.
Oh,
we were
that's
not-
Part of the
because-
lease, they
got
have to
it.
supply
Okay,
it.
that's the trip, okay, got it,
Yeah.
sorry.
All right.
Good.
Good.
Thank
Good
you.
deal.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for your time.
I think that was
Thank you.
productive.
Thank you, and thank you for rearranging the schedule. I really
Thank you.
appreciate
No,
it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we didn't keep you any later than we had to. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
yeah. All right, so, well, I'm just thankful Lee is on vacation.
I was gonna say the same thing, good thing the road foreman's not here.
All right, anything under, and this is just, I really don't want you to answer in a possible way, but is there anything under correspondence for information that you want to discuss?
Let me
I
see.
Actually, there is something.
Uh-oh.
to discuss, and this will be quick.
All right.
I want to assure you, I did not collaborate with my neighbor Suzanne Weinberg about her email on Miller.
Okay.
But, and I have put something in the folder about, I think Citizens Bank is offering 1.75% on CDs, and even though I would not be in favor of that, what I would suggest is that we put the Miller Fund under unfinished business, for subsequent agendas, so that it is on our radar screen, because we have, it's now invested in an untenable situation,
Okay,
in my estimation.
okay.
And I actually liked the thought of some of it going into the fund that Joe mentioned. I think the question we had was when they paid their interest, and obviously you haven't looked into it any further, not
Right.
being a supporter of it, but we'd about quadruple or more our rate, and we could,
Yeah, or it's more like 10 times.
10 times our rate, yeah. What was it, 1.75, Joe, I think?
1.75, and I think it's now what, point one?
And it was 2 years
Or I think it's 18 months or something
Yeah.
like that, yeah.
CD.
But it's 0.008 or something crazy right now, it's practically nothing.
That, I'll just bring it up again, that Vermont Community Loan Fund has term rates at 2% and 3% for a couple of years. They're not what is it?
FDIC, sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
they're
yeah,
not.
we don't wanna do
So,
that,
Sort of
I think
like
they're in
investing in
mutual
the
funds.
stock market though.
Right,
Yeah, and one thing I would be careful about is capital gain distributions on mutual funds usually come near the end of the year, and you do get an inflow of cash, but then usually the per share price drops considerably. Be careful about that.
but I think this would be, it would be under the town's tax ID
yeah.
number.
Right, yeah.
So I think that.
Yeah, but your per share, you may put in $50,000 in November and then get a capital gain distribution, and right away your $50,000 might be down to 40.
Yeah, but it could be reinvested.
Oh, yes, it would be reinvested, but it just gives the appearance of being unwise to invest right near the end of the year, where there's going to be a capital gain distribution. I don't know if that particular fund has a history of substantial capital gain distributions or not, but,
Actually, almost none.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
then it's not a concern.
Yeah, what I suggest is the Vanguard Index 500 fund, and
Yeah.
they have practically no capital gains because they just replicate the market.
Okay,
So, anyway,
Okay.
I do think we should look into the other possibility that Joe had. I mean, 1.75 for 18 months is way better than what we're doing now, and that is insured.
Okay,
So I think that
that's good.
Joe did put it in the file, and I meant to research it and didn't, but I think we should. For next meeting, maybe be on our agenda to look into that.
Sure. Okay, anything else under correspondence for information? Moving on, correspondence for discussion and or action. There was a letter back in that you received about just a possibility of parking at the community center. Do you want to?
Yes, so I guess so some folks in the village were gonna have a get-together of some sort, and they came up here to ask about parking. And I don't know what was said here, but then based on that, they emailed me and said, hey, we wanna park at the community center, can we get the go-ahead to do that? And I don't know if you saw my response, that's obviously not my decision, but they should, if they're gonna do that, it should have been coordinated with the community center, because in the end, the community center, I think, did have an event that weekend down there, so I don't think there was any deconfliction, but this group moved their gathering to a different location based on, I'm not sure, not the parking situation, but, so I think the discussion is probably gonna be brought back to us on, if people wanna use that to park, what are the guidelines for it? If,
I mean, wouldn't they first want to go to the community center board first, and,
I would think the
Right,
answer to that is
because we've leased the
yes.
facility to them.
Yeah, that's what I suggested.
Oh, good, okay, yeah.
But anyway, that's what I suggested because that's their thing.
Yeah, right, yeah.
However, I think the larger question is, if that's not being used and you got this parking lot down there that, we plow and we take care of and stuff, and somebody wants to use it, should they be able to use it? If the community center hasn't already made a prior commitment.
This is for a one-time event or something you're talking about, or?
Right, so
Yeah,
so
okay,
these
yeah.
folks were they're having a big get-together. Let's
Yeah,
just say there
yeah.
was 55 people coming and they needed parking
Yeah.
to go, so there's really no parking in the village.
Right, yeah.
So the question was, can they park down there? And my response was, I don't know, ask the community center, because
Right, yeah.
they kind of control it at the moment. But again, I think the larger question is, if they want to do that and the community center is not having something there, should they be able to say no and not have anybody park there?
Yeah, that's the question.
Wouldn't know the answer because they never went to the community center to ask them. But I think it is a question, should that be available to people throughout the town who want to park there if they're going to have an event? And whether we wait till someone brings it to us, which is what I suggested that the folks in the village do, come here with or communicate with us on what do you see, or what do you envision as being the appropriate way to use the community center, and then bring it to us and it will be on our agenda.
So why couldn't we preempt that with writing a letter to the board of the community center and asking them if they would have any issues with that? If they're not
we
scheduled
could
or,
start a discussion with them.
and see what they say. I mean, they might
Yeah.
say, yeah, that's fine, as long as it went through them, or they might say no, I don't know what they'd say.
Yeah, because the question was never asked to them. So we don't
Right,
know what they're-
but I think
so
it
yes.
would be benevolent of us to ask now, so we have an
Yeah.
answer, and we could have,
Yes, they could sell parking permits, right? You get a parking permit to put in your windshield for a special event.
yeah, well, they could easily say for a
Cut
$50 donation.
Yes.
They could.
Yeah.
I mean,
So I think we could direct you or Maria to write a note and ask them.
Okay, before we decide who will write that letter, let's.
I'll move that
further
we
on.
write a note to the directors of the community center to ask them what their stance is on parking for special events in the village.
Oh, just in the village?
I
That's
wouldn't
really
want
out
to
there
park
at their
cars there if I was
facility.
having something over here.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, what
it's,
if I had an
Well,
event?
you're pretty near the village, I think that's, I don't wanna put a mile restriction on it,
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
No, I mean, isn't the question their property? You know, parking at their property, isn't that what the whole question is about?
I wonder if there's a liability issue.
At, we say there,
The
The
community center.
center's property.
Well, that's our property.
Well, I understand, but, you know, they serve it,
they lease it.
yeah, they treat it as, you know, their.
If there's somebody like the friendly amendment, I'm tickled.
I
And I think basically, we just need to write a note and ask them what their
Yeah.
thoughts are.
Yeah.
If it's not being used,
Yeah.
could somebody approach them and utilize it?
okay, so we've got a motion.
I second it.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Yeah, to start the discussion.
yeah,
Perfect.
It's
So-
hard because there wasn't actually a conflict because
Yeah.
they moved their event, but
Right,
but
yeah.
the question
But-
remains
but-
outstanding.
Yeah, why don't we
No, I
just
think that's good.
iron
to
it out ahead of
establish
time?
question will come up again.
So,
So
you
see-
wanna do that, or?
that. Yeah.
Sure, I can
Okay,
do that.
yeah.
To community center board, community center board. Regarding parking, I can't read my writing, so I'll have to,
Call your assistant, she'll tell you.
yeah, or I'll have to watch the show.
Oh my God. Good thing she's not, yeah.
You got too much time on your hands.
No, I just, my memory, you know, I have to sometimes watch it just to remember what I agreed to do.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so, you done, we're done with that one? Okay. We got a letter, we added it at the beginning of the meeting. The Senate Operations is doing a tour of the state, getting feedback from a very vague bill, S-27, which has, would assign communities to provide primary law enforcement. And when I asked the senator who sponsored this, you know, we contract with the sheriff, explained that, for 22 hours of traffic, and, you know, the state police cover, you know, dispatched if you call 911. Is that primary coverage? Are we okay? And they didn't know, really didn't know much about this bill. And so they're having a meeting to take comments on September 21st at, is it something like 10 to 11? It's in the morning,
Yeah.
when
9 to 11:30.
9 to 11:30 in Bellows Falls, the Rockingham
Municipal building.
Municipal Building. So, and she took umbrage when I said, you know, actually, most select board members
Have full-time jobs.
have, you know, day jobs too, you know. That, I was told that, well, senators, you know,
Yeah.
are busy people too.
They are very busy and we're thankful for them.
Yeah. Some more than others. So, I'm just putting it out there. Anyone interested in law enforcement?
And I can try, but I gotta be gone to the
We could
league meeting
probably,
there
we
a
could
couple weeks
probably
later.
write a letter also, so let's see if someone can go. If not, I'm sure they would take written comments also.
I would really like to try to go, it's
Yeah.
just, I'm going to that conference 2 weeks
Yeah.
later at the league.
Maybe
so-
it will be a rainy day.
Yeah, perfect.
Yep. And rainy day, you can pick me up, right?
Oh, okay, all right, that's a deal.
Yeah, okay. We've already, okay, moving on, back to new business. Let's see, we had a meeting, we interviewed a candidate for the select board assistant, we talked with, or you delegated me to talk with our interim select board assistant, Maria Glaybeck, and I offered her the position after much, you know, I snuck up on her and I had her, you know, arm pinned behind her back. And, but after some thought, she let us know that she would take this position.
She would consider
Yes.
it.
No, she would.
She would
Okay.
take
She
it.
would, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you twisted her arm a little bit too, I think.
Yeah, so, so we need to make her official.
So do we need a motion?
Yes.
So I will move that we hire Maria Gullivac as the select board assistant.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll abstain, Maria.
All right. So
I don't want an appearance of a conflict of interest here.
now, okay, so now she's official, so now we can ask her to do things.
That's right, yeah.
I'd like to thank you for,
Thank you, Maria.
you know, being the interim for so long and agreeing to take this on. So you could, yeah, actually, you could actually sit up at the table if you'd like. Okay, I sent a letter to the other candidate. So we interviewed someone for Social Services Advisory Committee.
I'll move we appoint Terry Robinson to Social Services Committee.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I will abstain.
I'm gonna abstain as well.
Okay, so did I hear you do an aye?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so we have 3 votes in favor, 2 abstentions. Okay, I will send her a note letting her know she's been appointed. Let's see, the Planning Commission sent us a letter.
What about the other candidate or?
Oh, the DRB, we have to
Oh.
wait.
There was
Because
one
there's another
more
person.
candidate.
Okay.
Isn't that right, Steve?
And how many vacancies do we have?
One
One.
Okay.
on the DRB.
Yeah, I think we should, yeah.
Okay.
The Planning Commission is considering adding a goal, and they want to just run it past us. Any thoughts?
Well, I think we're just adding something to add something myself. So if you look at community facility service and utilities, goal number 1 under that subheading is to provide for the public health, safety, and general welfare of the community. And I think that is adequate without having to add something for the sake of adding something to town plan.
I think to further go along with that,
New business, that's green one.
boy, Act 64 has a lot to do with roads and things too, and I think that's, oh, I wished I had that.
It's right here,
Oh,
I think, because I wanted to take it, read it, before you.
I'll reserve my comment for a second.
Okay. I would say, if the, you know, my thought is if the Planning Commission wants to put that in, and then take it to their next public hearing before they send it on to the select board, then I'm fine with that. So,
I don't see a reason for it to go in, but.
yeah, then we would, if the version that they send on to the select board has that in, then we would have public hearings and get input also, so.
we can take it back out.
Yeah, so, yes?
May I ask what the new goal is?
We're trying to find it. We all read it.
A summary.
We're trying to find it.
It has to do with runoff on roads, right?
No,
No,
this
this is the, they want to add, specifically add money into the,
Oh, that's so,
Then
oh, yeah,
yeah,
okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm on to something else, yeah.
something, maybe Marie, you can remember my memory. It's something to the effect that, one of the goals of the town to be.
Who did it come from?
There you go, I think I can read it.
Okay,
Provide an annual budget line parentheses, allocated based upon
Oh, you need glasses?
proportionate to measurable outcomes for direct financial and/or indirect in-kind support to local or, when available, regional, private, not-for-profit, social service agencies that measurably affect in a positive manner the well-being of at-risk and vulnerable citizens physically living within the borders of Dummerston and is consistent with 24 VSA Chapter 73.
Wow.
Yeah.
And where did that come from?
One of the planning commission members generated it.
Oh,
I think it was at something recommended at one of the public forums. Is that what it said?
Yeah, I
It
think
was prompted by,
in response to,
in response to
yeah.
the public forum.
So,
You're basically you're requiring the select board to requiring action by the select board.
I read it as it being a goal, and
And, I mean, the letter that came said that before we add a goal requiring the select board, the select board review it. So,
oh, okay, so they're looking for the select board to review it. Is that
And it's-
called passing the buck, or is that?
And they want it to go under it's the community facility services and utilities, right? That's the section they want to go under.
Yes,
I mean,
I should have got that out
it
quicker.
would be important to have a rationale for it and sort of,
Well, you'd hope that everything in the town plan has a rationale. I go back to just saying, if the planning commission wants to put that in, put
Go
it
ahead.
in, run it up the flagpole, you know, and see what happens.
Sounds good to me.
but they were looking for our,
Yes, they were
Affirmation
looking
of it.
for us to salute or not.
Imprimatur.
And, yeah, I'd like them to take it to a public hearing, see what feedback they get.
good.
I don't, but that's fine. We're taking, 6 words and turning them into 35 words, but okay. Length, sometimes, it's quality versus quantity, but sometimes quantity is
So
important.
the planning commission hasn't taken a vote to put this in yet?
No, they haven't.
Okay. So you can, well, if the planning commissioners were to watch this meeting, they would see that some were lukewarm on this, and some less than lukewarm, and others saying, it's still their baby. So that's why they were appointed to make these hard decisions. Shall we move on?
I'm ready to move on.
Okay, yes, Cindy, Joe?
I'm just curious as to whether there was going to be any other discussion tonight about the social services.
No, and I'm sorry if the agenda made it seem like that.
Okay.
My wife tells me I should always sober up before I hit the
She's a wise woman, so we all know that.
We have social services candidates that.
Right, so that's what my intention was just to be, that we, let's see, we had a select board assistant, social services, that we, I usually put discussion and possible appointments, and
Okay.
we have the option of, appointing.
I also was expecting that there might be some questions, especially from Hugh to the Dummerston Cares people, about whether they might be interested in taking on a further role.
No, I don't have anything. I like what they put out, what they put in our boxes. I think just what I said earlier. Your
Right.
community, doing things for the community,
Yep.
and that's something
We're
that
not
should
in a
be
position
supported.
to be your fiscal agent for, for social services.
No, I think, no.
Yeah.
I think
But
what
I
you're
think it
doing
was a
is.
great update and learning,
Yeah.
or certainly a learning experience for myself, what you actually do
Oh,
in the
yeah.
community.
Right.
Because I don't think I was aware that you were involved. I knew some things you're involved in, but no idea the extent of what you're doing.
Yeah, we're.
And to do all that and $4,000 is astronomical.
Right. We're pleased with the way things are going.
You should be very pleased, yeah. Just to get, geez, you can't hire employees, so when you can get volunteers, that's even incredible. No, I commend you guys, that's,
Bill Schmidt is a fantastic leader.
I think Zeke's gonna be sober before this meeting's over.
he's sweating quite a bit, that's good. Yeah. So let's wrap this up.
All right, okay, so I hope you enjoyed the meeting.
So much. I'm gonna go have dinner now. Thank you
Okay.
for your service, everyone.
Okay, I'll try to make it
Cindy,
more
is that your water?
clear.
Oh, yes, thank you.
I do that with gin sometimes. Just, you know,
Yeah, just put it in a water bottle, right?
Care that he's on television.
I'm just kidding, you know.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I
Right,
didn't know
yeah.
that.
So,
Okay, unfinished business. Any word back from
Oh,
the?
gosh.
Yes, he called.
He called you.
Yes, okay. I gave him my phone number, and
Okay.
encouraged him to reach out to me. We had a nice chat. I was surprised with his lack of computer skills. First, he didn't know where Brookline is. And then I encouraged him to look on Google Maps or MapQuest, and he'd never done that before.
Oh, dear.
I was trying to tell him where Grassy Brook Road and Hill Road were, and he couldn't figure it out. And
Okay.
I mean, he's got a good-looking website, and obviously he's got some help with that. But I gave him the contact information for Brookline folks. So, and he understands that we have, turned this down.
Good.
Okay,
So it's,
So, yeah,
it can be crossed off our
I think we can
list.
cross it
Oh,
off,
goodness.
yes.
talk about liability.
Okay.
Good.
Is there any other business you'd like to discuss? That was a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
I really-
I have a very brief personnel matter I would like to discuss in executive session, and I would not expect us to take any action thereon.
All right.
are you gonna give a report on the rescue meeting?
Oh, that's right. Someone, it'd be nice to have a little quick rescue. Both of you went, right?
Yeah, well, Geraldine was sort of our representative, I squeaked in at the last minute. But
Yeah, I mean, actually, you were there before I was. I'm not prepared with any
Okay.
detail. Are you, Steve? Did you?
Other than I thought it was a fabulous meeting, I would like our social services committee to look into giving rescue some more money other than what we allocate in our budget. Their reimbursements are nothing compared to what their expenses are when they go out on an ambulance call. What is it, $250 or $280, the ambulance call generally costs them, and they get, what, a $60 reimbursement? So there's an area that I think in social services that we could help a little bit more. I'd also say the level of training that the people have there is incredible. I mean, they have far and beyond more than, you'd think they'd have first aid training, but the training that they have, medical training they have is incredible. All the way up to being flight EMTs on the choppers so they can prepare somebody that's getting in a chopper so they're ready to go.
Right.
Incredible, right? I mean,
I was totally impressed
their
with
funding is
Yeah.
so bad, their reimbursements, and I would encourage Dummerston residents to contribute to rescue. I would really encourage Dummerston residents, I think it's $60 that you can pay for the ambulance fee.
A membership. It's a
membership.
rescue membership that is optional, but really, I mean, everybody, I would like to see us encourage people to do that. It's a little confusing why you would join rescue, but the obvious thing is that if you were ever to need an ambulance, instead of paying $1,000 or $1,500 for that, you pay a very small fee for it because you're a member of rescue. So right then and there, that's an insurance policy that pays for itself.
Mhm.
But it's impressive, the leadership there, the training, I'd agree with everything that Steve is saying. And, you know, maybe a number of years ago, there was some challenges within the board or whatever that was in the paper, and people's confidence in rescue plummeted. I think that those days are over, because it's a very well-run, well-equipped service that we have in our area
Everything
that
from
we shouldn't take for granted.
fast water rescues to cave rescues
Yeah.
to ice rescues to transportation. Their training levels are incredible. And tactical training now for tactical situations. Again, the flight training. You know, generally, sometimes you go to a meeting and you say, "Oh God, another meeting."
that was-
That was an excellent
Yeah,
meeting.
good.
Very well done.
Yeah. I agree.
And it was
Yeah.
great.
Are they financially though? I mean, I just looking at, so we 42,000. I mean, are they financially sound? I mean, they just build-
because of all the fundraising that their board does.
Yeah.
They have a board too that is really dedicated.
Right.
There's 2 or 3 members of that board, including Harold, who have
Yep.
been there forever.
Right.
And right now, they're raffling a car. People could go down and buy raffle tickets. I mean, they work hard to raise the difference between their reimbursements and what they're
The number of
operating
people
costs
that pay for a membership, that $60 a year, is tiny,
Mhm.
minuscule. So that in and of itself, I mean, you can get exhausted by fundraising activities and, you know, paying money that, you know, for a raffle that you don't win, but you paying that $60 membership
if you need an
gets you
ambulance.
something.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, and honestly, Hugh, in our past discussions, I've thought, Jesus, that's a lot of money to be paying rescue.
Yeah.
But when you actually talk about the vehicles that they have to maintain, the levels of training and the hours of training, and they're a group that benefits you, me, every resident of Dummerston. When you call rescue, they're coming. And so I when you talk about
Yeah, the other thing that I learned there that was really interesting is when there's a fire, rescue will come to monitor the firefighters to make sure that they're not inhaling too much smoke, to make sure that they're and make sure they're hydrated. And so I thought that was a really interesting engagement that they have with community fire
very good
departments.
meeting, very
Good.
enlightening meeting. So
Good, thanks for asking about that.
I'm glad that both of you were able to go.
yeah, I'm glad I went. Maria will attest to the fact that I said, "Oh my God, I don't know,"
Yeah,
but it was great.
Good night, Sue.
great.
Nice. So,
Thanks, Sue.
well, if that case, I'll move that we go into executive session for a personnel matter.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.